Good morning, gardeners, and welcome to Wednesday, August 9th. My name is Catherine, and I created a show called Good Morning Gardeners, even though I can't grow green things because I am referring to gardening metaphorically. We're planting the seeds for a better day. We're starting our morning by getting in the right mindset to cultivate a better life for ourselves, better communities, and a better world. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and subscribe if you'd like to add Good Morning Gardeners to your morning routine. I do my best to wake you up with positive and mentally stimulating ideas, but sometimes I do miss things. If you have something to add to the ideas that I discussed today, please chime in the comment section below. And before we get started, I need to let you guys know that I will be taking yet another vacation starting on August 14th, so there will be no new episodes from Monday, August 14th through Friday, August 18th. I don't normally take so many vacations so close together, but I do normally embark on 2 adventures every summer, and it just worked out this way this summer that both of my vacations were kind of clustered at the end of the summer. So I will be back with you after the Monday after Friday, August 18th. So today's daily Stoic reading, titled Stick with Just the Facts, begins with a quote from Marcus Aurelius. Don't tell yourself anything more than what the initial impressions report. It's been reported to you that someone is speaking badly about you. This is the report. The report wasn't that you've been harmed. I see that my son is sick, but not that his life is at risk. So always stay within your first impressions and don't add to them in your head. This way, nothing can happen to you. The authors add, at first, this can seem like the opposite of everything you've been taught. Don't we cultivate our minds and critical thinking skills precisely so we don't simply accept things at face value? Yes, most of the time, but sometimes this approach can be counterproductive. What a philosopher also has is the ability, as Nietzsche put it, to stop courageously at the surface and see things in plain, objective form. Nothing more, nothing less. Yes, Stoics were superficial, he said, out of profundity. Today, while other people are getting carried away, that's what you are going to practice, a kind of straightforward pragmatism, seeing things as their initial impressions make them. So I like this one quite a bit, especially since I have quite a bit of personal experience with teaching myself not to overreact. I have struggled with anxiety for a very long time, and I'm sure, as you all know, having a constantly raised anxiety level or an easily raised anxiety level makes it very easy for your thoughts to spiral out of control. So if you are like me and the call in the Daily Stoic today sounds like it would be difficult or challenging or maybe, not the right fit for you, keep listening, because today's episode is going to be all about getting and keeping control over your thoughts. For our learning moment, I'm going to reopen a book I haven't shared from in a while. Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz, an old-timey self-help book written by a cosmetic surgeon after he became interested in the way his patients' personalities seemed to change after their physical appearance changed. This book is written from the perspective of the reader accomplishing a goal. So when you hear this mentioned as I read, remember that the goal can be anything you like. Becoming more financially successful, becoming more physically healthy, finding more peace in your life, or all of the above. Maxwell writes, many people have a tendency to magnify out of all proportion the potential penalty or failure which the crisis situation holds. We use our imaginations against ourselves and make mountains out of molehills, or else we do not use our imaginations at all to see what the situation really holds, but habitually and unthinkingly react as if every simple opportunity or threat were a life or death matter. If you face a real crisis, you need a lot of excitement. The excitement can be used to good advantage in the crisis situation. However, if you overestimate the danger or the difficulty, if you react to information that is faulty, disordered, or unrealistic, you are likely to call up much more excitement than the occasion calls for, because the real threat is much less than you have estimated. all this excitement cannot be used appropriately. It cannot be gotten rid of through creative action. Therefore, it remains inside of you, bottled up as the jitters. A big excess of emotional excitement can harm rather than help performance simply because it is inappropriate. Philosopher and mathematician Bertrand Russell tells of a technique which he used on himself to good advantage in toning down excessive excitement. When some misfortune threatens, consider seriously and deliberately what is the very worst that could possibly happen. Having looked at this possible misfortune in the face, give yourself sound reasons for thinking that, after all, it would be no such very terrible disaster. Such reasons always exist, since, at the worst, nothing that happens to oneself has any cosmic importance. When you have looked for some time steadily at the worst possibility and have said to yourself with real conviction, well, after all, that would not matter so very much, you will find that your worry diminishes to a quite extraordinary extent. It might be necessary to repeat the process a few times, but in the end, if you have shirked nothing in facing the worst possible issue, you will find that your worry disappears altogether and is replaced by a kind of exhilaration. Most of us, however, allow ourselves to be thrown off course by very minor or even imaginary threats, which we insist upon interpreting as life or death, do or die situations. Someone has said that the greatest cause of ulcers is mountain climbing over molehills. A salesman calling upon an important prospect may act as if it were a matter of life or death. Many people going to be interviewed about a job act as if they were scared to death, and so on. Perhaps this life or death feeling that many people experience in any sort of crisis situation is a heritage from our dim and distant past, when failure to primitive man usually was synonymous with death. Regardless of its origin, however, experience of numerous patients has shown that it can be cured by calmly and rationally analyzing the situation. Ask yourself, what is the worst that can possibly happen if I fail? Rather than responding automatically, blindly, and irrationally. So, I'm sure you have all heard this advice before, to consider what the worst that could possibly happen is, and then the idea is that after you do this, you'll realize the situation isn't all that bad. But if you're like me, this doesn't really work. Because when I'm emotionally elevated, like super anxious, it's really hard for me to look at the situation realistically. And, when I'm super anxious, I can conjure up the mental image of a seriously bad outcome, no matter the situation. And to me, because I'm so anxious and excited, as Maxwell Maltz puts it, or emotionally elevated or upset, it seems realistic to me at the time. And, if I was super upset right now, I could easily come up with a handful of freak accident ways that I could die just sitting here recording this video. And that's not to trigger you into doing the same thing right now. This is only to tell you that I have been, whether naturally or as the result of my traumas, an extremely anxious person. I also happen to have a vivid imagination that can be used for good or evil. And yet, even I have been able to greatly reduce my anxiety. And yes, considering the worst that can happen is a tool that I use, but I think it's often ignored that if you are too anxious or too emotionally elevated, this question will not make things better, but it will make things worse. Obviously, I am going to offer you some additional tips beyond just asking yourself the worst case scenario. But before I do, I want to make it clear that reducing anxiety and getting control of chaotic thoughts is a major process. You will find many tools that you can use to control negative thoughts. Some of them might work quickly, but in my experience, most of them are what I think of as preventative, in that I practice them every single day when times are good, so that if a stressful situation does arise, I am already in a better position to handle it. And of course, as with anything, everyone is unique and you must build your own set of processes and tools. So take what you like from this episode today and discard the rest. For our feel-good moment today, I'm going to read another from Psycho-Cybernetics, in which Maxwell is discussing what he calls that winning feeling. If we dwell upon failure and continually picture failure to ourselves in such vivid detail that it becomes real to our nervous system, we will experience the feelings that go with failure. Your nervous system can't tell real failure from imagined failure. On the other hand, if we keep our positive goal in mind and picture it to ourselves so vividly as to make it real, and think of it in terms of an accomplished fact, we will also experience winning feelings, self-confidence, courage, and faith that the outcome will be desirable. We cannot consciously peek into our creative mechanism and see whether it is geared for success or failure, but we can determine its present set by our feelings. When it is set for success, we experience that winning feeling. And if there is one simple secret to the operation of your unconscious creative mechanism, it is this: call up, capture, evoke the feeling of success. When you feel successful and confident, you will act successfully. When the feeling is strong, you can literally do no wrong. The winning feeling itself does not cause you to operate successfully, but it is more in the nature of a sign or a symptom that we are geared for success. It is more like a thermometer, which does not cause the heat in the room, but measures it. However, we can use this thermometer in a very practical way. Remember, when you experience that winning feeling, your internal machinery is set for success. The science of cybernetics throws new light on just how the winning feeling operates. We have previously shown how electronic servo mechanisms make use of stored data, comparable to human memory, to remember successful actions and repeat them. Skill learning is largely a matter of trial and error practice until a number of hits or successful actions have registered in memory. Cybernetic scientists have built what they call an electronic mouse, which can learn its way through a maze. The first time through, the mouse makes numerous errors. It constantly bumps into walls and obstructions, but each time it bumps into an obstruction, it turns 90 degrees and tries again. If it runs into another wall, it makes another turn, and it goes forward again. Eventually, after many, many errors, stops and turns, the mouse gets through the open space in the maze. The electronic mouse, however, remembers the turns which were successful, and the next time through, these successful motions are reproduced or played back, and the mouse goes through the open space quickly and efficiently. The object of practice is to make repeated trials, constantly correct errors until a hit is scored. When a successful pattern of action is performed, the entire action pattern from beginning to end is not only stored in what we call conscious memory, but in our very nerves and tissues. Folk language can be very intuitive and descriptive. When we say, "I had a feeling in my bones that I could do it," we are not far from wrong. So in light of this, I present to you my 3 tips for maintaining control of your thoughts. Number 1, practice being calm when times are good. You might not love this one, and you have definitely heard it before, but I can't skip it because in my experience, it is so important. Every single day, do something that increases your level of relaxation in a noticeable way. You want to be able to sit back after you're done and say, wow, that made me so much more relaxed. Or if you can't say that, you can at least say, okay, I do feel a little bit more relaxed now. Because then you are consciously noticing that you are more relaxed, which is increasing the likelihood that you will remember how that felt, which will make it easier to achieve and or maintain later. For me, the biggest relaxation practice is meditation. But before you turn me off, I've learned recently that meditation doesn't have to be just sitting in silence. It can be going for a walk or a run. It can be done during swimming or weightlifting. It can be painting or building something. Just about anything that quiets your mind and puts you into a flow state is a meditative act. And in Psycho-Cybernetics, Maxwell also asserts that putting yourself into a relaxed state will have a residual effect later, meaning that there's a sort of relaxation residue that lingers after you're done meditating, and it can cause you to be more calm in the rest of your life. Number 2, dwell on times that you handled stressful situations well. As Maxwell discusses at length in Psycho-Cybernetics, our mind is like a muscle that falls back into the muscle memory of what we have done before. And he even asserts that you can develop skills simply by imagining yourself successfully practicing that skill. So even if you can't think of a stressful situation where you stayed calm and acted rationally, use your imagination and conjure one up. Then dwell on it. Replay it in your mind's eye before you go to sleep every night. One of the things that I realized when I started doing this was that I had actually handled far more situations well than I had previously realized. But at that time, my self-esteem was so low that I hadn't been giving myself credit for the good things that I had done and the rational ways in which I had acted. Number 3, when you do receive a negative input or encounter a stressful situation, pause everything. As much as you can. Don't speak, don't act, and do your best not to think. Your first priority will be checking in with your emotional state. Our thoughts and feelings are so intricately connected, you will be unable to think clearly at first until you're able to calm down. And if you are upset, which you probably are, do something with your body that will help calm your nervous system down. A couple of things that I have used that worked are doing physical activity, like going for a run, doing a bunch of push-ups. The stress hormones in our body, they want to be let out or they want to be used in some way. And doing physical activity is one of the easiest ways to let them out or use them. And also you can, kill two birds with one stone by working out and calming down at the same time. So another thing that I have done that worked is to put something cold on my face. This can be a cold beverage, cold water, or even cold air, which works especially well in the winter. If you get super stressed out, you can go for a walk or just step outside in the cold air on your face. In my experience, it actually does quite a bit. There's a legit science to why making our face cold calms us down, but I'm not going to go into that this morning. You can try this, and if it works, great. But if not, move on to the next thing. Just like the electronic mouse in the maze, eventually you will find your way out. And the ancestors said, if you find a creative hobby that's just for you to enjoy without the pressure to share, you'll have a key to peace for yourself. For our focus moment today, I invite you simply to latch on to one thing that I mentioned in today's episode. If anxiety, rushing thoughts, and spiraling emotions is a challenge for you, you might want to bookmark this video to watch later, because gaining control over your thoughts is a process and it does take time. It takes practice. And at least in my experience, it never totally goes away. So as with anything, you have to fall in love with the process. But in this case, it's the process of maintaining control over your thoughts. In a way, it can be like a hobby. So this is your cue to choose one way in which you are going to cultivate this hobby. Just choose one thing I mentioned today. Think of a specific situation in your life to which you can apply this thing and plan to do it. I hope you found this helpful, and I hope you have a wonderful day. I will speak with you again tomorrow.